ask who is hosting?
I'm the chair, Bob.
Hey, Carl. Carl, do I have sharing privileges?
I think Maria or somebody will take care of that when you need to share. Just ask and they'll set you up for it.
Thank you.
Is Maria with us?
You're live now, Chair, so you're all set to start whenever. And I believe I have a copy of the presentation I can share as well. If not, Maria can provide you those privileges.
Okay.
I'm going to need the privileges because the presentation is a little bit different than the one we sent you earlier.
Okay. If I could ask you, Peter, just send me a quick note on how to share that, because I've clicked on Bob's information. And do I?
On the three dots over his name, if you just hover over the top right corner of his display, there's a.
Hold on a sec. So for Bob. Oh, I see it.
Top right corner.
Yep.
And then there should be an option there to make him a co-host.
Okay, I'll do that right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Peter.
Okay, I'll call this meeting to order then. Welcome, everybody. I think we have a quorum, so we're good to go. First item on our agenda is a disclosure.
Recording in progress.
A disclosure of pecuniary interest. Is there any disclosure? I don't see any. So I'll move on to item number 2 on the agenda, which is the approval of the agenda. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Ryan Day, seconded by Councillor Bothwell. Resolved that the October 27th, 2021 Grimsby Green Advisory Committee meeting agenda be approved. All in favor, please raise your hand. That carries. Then the next item on the agenda is a delegation by Mr. Bob Friesen. The delegation is going to talk about the Grimsby Beach Community Tree Inventory. And I'm going to call on Bruce McKenzie to introduce Mr. Friesen. Bruce?
Yes, thanks, Chair Carl. Just before I introduce Mr. Friesen, going back to the agenda, should there have been an agenda item for the approval of the minutes from the last meeting? Or is
They've already been approved by council, Bruce, so
okay.
You're a little
right,
late. I was wondering about that myself, but it's not on the agenda.
That's fine, and I understand that, Carl. It's something I'm used to from other agendas.
I am too.
Well, thank you very much, Chair Carl. It's my pleasure to introduce Bob Friesen to the Grimsby Green Committee. I had the pleasure of meeting Bob about a year ago, and I've been observing with him and from a distance his work on the inventory of trees at the Grimsby Beach community. Bob's been doing this work, and I'm hoping I'm not taking Bob's words from him, but with the Grimsby Beach land use study. Bob has been a great citizen here because he has really put in a professional amount of, a tremendous amount of work at a professional level on the tree inventory for the Grimsby Beach, and it's become, I think, an important part of the Grimsby Beach land use study that is coming to near completion now there. So it's been a pleasure for me knowing and working with Bob, And I hope you will all share that feeling after Bob's presentation. Thank you, Chair Carl.
Thanks, Bruce. First of all, I want to stress that it's not just Bob who carried out the tree inventory. I had a lot of help from Sharon Porter and a few other citizens that helped us along. The inspiration for doing the tree inventory came from an observation that the tree canopy in Grimsby Beach has been thinning over the last decade, and Sharon and I and some other community members wanted to do something about that. We started by making an inventory of the trees growing in our green spaces. And then we made this slideshow, which we hope you've had a chance to preview. The slideshow, made beautiful by Sharon's design talent, addresses our concerns and the issues we think need to be solved if our urban canopy will continue to survive. That slideshow is a good preparation for this presentation. It identifies the importance of mature trees and how they impact our community. And we think it'll be useful for our town staff and town residents to view it. Tonight's presentation, however, is more focused on the inventory and other data that hopefully will mobilize you as a committee to take action to preserve our urban canopy. We use maps acquired from the town office to plot out where our trees are growing. This slide shows 6 green spaces we visited, counted, and measured trees, and with the help of Bruce, identified them by genus and species. For example, here's a map of the trees in Bell Park. Each number corresponds to a tree. And each tree was measured for height and diameter and recorded on a list like this. It takes a close look at the kinds of trees that grow in this beautiful park. You'll find that most of them are not indigenous. Only a few replacement trees that have been planted by residents with the permission of the town, are indigenous. Here are the trees on Victoria Terrace. There are some wonderful examples of old growth indigenous trees here. There's 6 white pines that are over 125 years old, and some are over 80 feet high. There's a sugar maple that's over 250 years old, and beside it, our only specimen of white oak. It is also over 250 years old and is nearly 90 feet high. And so, as Sharon and I continued to tour our community, we found more and more heritage trees. Heritage trees on Phelps Avenue, in the Grand Old Oak Stand, adjacent to Grand Avenue School, and in a small woodlot sandwiched between Betts and Birch Park Avenue. It was pretty remarkable to discover what we found when we just took the time to stop and count and record what was there. And this is what we did with the data we collected. We organized it in graphs like this one. And when you do that, you notice some interesting things. This graph shows all the trees that grow on Victoria Terrace. Each dot represents a tree. On the y-axis is the estimated age. And on the x-axis is species. And when you look at this graph, it shows that there's fewer old growth indigenous trees than younger invasives. In other words, our old growth indigenous canopy is being replaced by invasive species. Since indigenous trees support other indigenous flora and fauna, we need to be careful about the trees that we encourage to grow, or we may find that other indigenous life may begin to disappear as well. And so this tree inventory gives us a snapshot of what our urban forests look like in the spring of 2021. It will never be quite complete and will always need to be updated as trees fall, are taken down, or planted. Still, it is a powerful tool because it tells us what assets we have and gives us an idea of what we need to plant to replenish what has been lost. It also gives us an idea of where the best places to plant certain species are. For example, the black cherry trees that grow so well near Grand Avenue School, for whatever reason, do not do as well on Victoria Terrace. If we're going to be successful in replenishing our canopy, it would be most efficient to put the right tree in the right place, and this inventory would help in that regard. This inventory is baseline data. Repeating it in the future could help us determine the health of the canopy over time to see if any efforts we make today have an impact on the urban forest of the future. And this brings me to a key point of the presentation. We need to be using data to make decisions. Without metrics, it's difficult to make wise decisions and measure success. It is only by measuring our actions that we can learn and adapt our practices. And this inventory, or any inventories contracted by the town, could be used as baseline data to accomplish this. I'd like to now share other data that helps us understand the importance of maintaining and nurturing an urban canopy. According to the American Forestry Association, mature living trees have real monetary value because they capture carbon, reduce air pollution, prevent erosion, and cool their surroundings. In 1992, when Growing Greener Cities was published, these living air conditioners were said to be worth $57,151 US per tree over 50 years of growth. In today's dollars and Canadian dollars, the monetary benefits of mature tree growing in your neighborhood could be estimated to be worth $138,557.32 per tree. This value seems enormous, and it leads us to question the accuracy of the numbers used to calculate a tree's value. But even if the numbers are overinflated by half or even by a quarter, it is still shocking when we put a monetary value on all that trees do. Then again, the folks on Gulf Woods Drive who had their basements flooded twice last weekend are likely coming to terms with just how important trees are in soil retention. The point of this is that it makes us realize that mature trees have real monetary value, and our municipality needs to learn and internalize this. According to National Geographic, mature trees can cool their surroundings by 15 degrees. And if they're shading a car, can reduce the internal temperature of that car 45 degrees. The energy costs to cool sidewalks, parking lots, buildings, and cars are reduced significantly when shade trees are growing nearby. There's shade, and the water vapor produced through transpiration cools the atmosphere where they grow. This in turn reduces energy consumption needed to cool buildings and cars, which saves money and the environmental costs of producing and transporting electricity. According to a study by the University of Iowa, mature trees have the same carbon capture ability of 269 saplings of the same species. In other words, you have to plant 269 saplings to replace one mature tree. When has anyone planted 269 saplings to replace an old growth tree that had to be cut down? The conclusion of this data is that mature trees are incredibly valuable. Not only do they provide habitat for animals and plants, psychological benefits to those who live nearby, mature trees have real and significant monetary value, and it's for this reason that we ask the Green Committee, the town staff, and all the residents of Grimsby to start viewing mature trees as assets that need to be protected, just like roads and sewers and buildings. There are costs to maintaining and nurturing an urban canopy, just as there are costs to maintaining roads, sewers, and buildings. But the benefits far outweigh the costs, and at a time when our climate is heating up, there isn't a better investment. There has been a great deal said about planting trees to fight climate change. And while we maintain that it's far wiser to protect and preserve the mature trees we have, many residents in Grimsby Beach are all for planting new trees. Residents have built and sold birdhouses to raise money for this. Many residents, with permission from town, have planted trees because we recognize that canopy will not last forever. We have put signs up in the neighborhood to educate visitors about the importance and the power of mature trees. But at the same time, we're cautious about tree planting programs. There has been a lot of talk about planting Carolinian trees, but we would suggest that the criteria for replacement trees needs to be more stringent. We noticed that some trees the town has purchased that, while Carolinian, are not shade trees and will never grow to a height where they can be considered part of the urban canopy. Eastern redbud, for example, great looking tree, but when it maxes out its height at 30 feet, it's not going to do much to shade a building or a house. Another important issue with regards to planting new trees is some sort of maintenance plan to look after them in their first tender years of life. Here's a photo of a shagbark hickory planted to replace a 278-year-old specimen that fell on Victoria Terrace last October. Great initiative, but no one was assigned to look after it, so it died within days of going into the ground. We are confident that residents living nearby would have watered, mulched, and monitored this young tree if they had been asked. If they had been asked and informed and involved, we believe the effort to buy and plant this replacement tree would not have been wasted. There's a great opportunity here for town staff and residents to work together to nurture and replenish our urban forest. It is even written in the Parks and Rec and Cultural Official Plan to seek out opportunities to have town staff and residents work together. Preserving our urban canopy is a great opportunity to do this. Here are a couple of initiatives that we believe will be successful if town staff and residents work together. Consulting with residents where new trees are to be planted and approach them to adopt a tree would go a long way to making a tree planting program a success. We are confident that many residents and citizens would offer to purchase trees through the town of Grimsby's tree designation program and look after them in the first few years of growth if such a program was promoted more aggressively. An appreciation for mature trees could be nurtured with the creation of a heritage tree walk. Visitors might download information via a QR code, be guided from tree to tree, and thereby be educated about the benefits of an urban canopy. It's through initiatives like these that we may come to recognize trees as natural assets and begin to protect and preserve them because it makes ecological and economic sense. We hope that as a Green Committee, you can use your influence to make these initiatives and others a reality. Thanks for reviewing the slideshow we sent you earlier and for viewing and listening to this presentation. I'd like to leave you with these 5 points. Thanks for listening.
Okay,
Thank you. That was a great presentation.
let's have a discussion about the presentation. Any comments, committee? Any questions, committee? Councillor Bothwell?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I don't know if this is for Bob or for Bruce. Can you remind me what the current tree canopy coverage is for the Niagara region? Is it 13% and then Grimsby is like 7% and the goal is 30% coverage? Could you remind me where we're at with respect to canopy coverage?
I'll try to handle that, Bob, unless you have that information at your fingertips.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Can you hear me, Chair Carl?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. Dorothy, I think your numbers are pretty correct. And especially the last one, with the goal being 30%. And certainly the numbers that I've seen across in different discussions is that every community is a long way from reaching its potential. And so that's one of the reasons that makes Bob's presentation so refreshing tonight. I think Bob has hit the nail on the head when he talks about trees and asset management. The new term that's been being spoken about is natural asset management. It's so important. And one item that I'd just like to add in, Chair Carl, well, I'll wait my turn because Dorothy may not be finished.
No, that's great. I want to thank Bob again for his presentation, and thank you, Bruce, for clarifying. I just wondered, and I know this isn't probably something Bruce can answer at this point. There was a number of recommendations in the land use planning documents and support documents on how the town could advance some tree protections. What do you feel is the strongest method that we can do for Grimsby Beach to protect the significant older growth trees that you've shown in your inventory? What can we do to protect those and move forward through that recommendations through that study?
Dorothy, just last week, I was out my front yard and First Tree was out there doing their own tree inventory. And I assume that the town contracts them to do it for risk management. And I think that's, of course, very, very important. We want to keep people and their property safe. I think that it's important that we look at trees. It's interesting when Sharon and I were walking around and doing the inventory, a number of neighbors came out and asked us, what are you doing? Because we were standing there looking up and down a tree and measuring them. And it looked, I guess, a little suspicious. And when they came out, we had 3 neighbors who all had stories about issues that they'd had with a town tree adjacent to their property. And they were worried about the risk of it. They were worried about the health of the tree. In one case, they were worried about the preservation of the tree. And all 3 of them were not satisfied with the response they got from the municipal office. And I think it's really, really important that not only do you do a tree inventory, but you do you check you do an inventory of the people who live around them. I think it's not hard to get people to look at a tree and see what can be done to preserve it. But if you just ignore the problem, I think it's a big I think that's a big issue. So I think the most important thing is that they take a look at the inventory that we did, or the one that they contracted through Safe Tree. Look at trees that they're concerned about and consult the people who live underneath those trees about what they're going to do. They may be town trees, but they need to be, I think the consultation between residents is very important. And I do think that a tree planting program is obviously important. I've been a resident of this community for 33 years. I've seen the canopy thin, and I'm concerned. That's the reason why I started doing the inventory. And we have to replace the trees, but it has to be done in a very, very thoughtful manner. You can't just plunk trees in the ground and expect them to grow, like that example of the shagbark hickory. We need to have a maintenance program. And I think it's beyond the expectations of us to have of town staff to monitor trees in all parts of Grimsby. But if you involve the residents that live around those trees, I think you're going to get a lot of buy-in. You're going to save a lot of money, and because you're not going to have the failure of trees when they're put in the ground and ignored. They need to be nurtured in the first few years of their life, and the best way I think to do that is to ask and approach the people who live around them to see if they will adopt a tree. And I think in a community like not just Grimsby Beach, but in the community of Grimsby, I think you could get tremendous buy-in. But the effort has to be made to do that, or I don't think it's going to happen.
Thank you.
So Bob, I have a question. What specifically are you asking? I think you're asking council to do something. What specifically are you asking for? Our number 1 priority and number 2 priority are tree protection and tree planting. And we don't seem to be able to really get any traction in terms of implementing something meaningful. Our advice goes to council and it gets approved by council, but there's nothing specific, nothing meaningful, in my opinion. What you've said about the Grimsby Beach area, I think is equally pertinent to the rest of the town. What can we do to get something like this going? I agree with adopting a tree with the people that are closest to that tree are the ones that should be involved in maintaining the tree. Do you have a specific program, some specific ideas and action plan that you could recommend?
The town already has a tree designation program. It's on their website. I think the issue is that I don't know what percentage of the population of Grimsby looks at the website. So it has to be more aggressively done, whether it's door to door by flyer, whether it's people, whether it's volunteers that knock on doors to say, hey, have you heard of this? And would you like to adopt a tree? It is going to take a planning community by community. And I think it has to be kind of on the ground, people knocking on doors or letters being delivered. I've had lots of letters delivered to me by the town staff, but it doesn't have to be done through town staff, I don't think. I think there's enough people in Grimsby who are interested in preserving an urban canopy that you could do it within a community, knock on doors and say, hey, would you like to adopt a tree?
I think we have Olivia Fraser with us. She's gone. What happened to her? Oh, there you are.
Hi.
Olivia, do you have, I see Sarah's not with us this evening. Do you have any comments to do with trees, tree planting programs, tree protection?
Yeah, so I know one of the items we kind of have on the agenda for 2020 is kind of looking at a strategic approach on how we're protecting the urban canopy. So that's still really high level, but we're just trying to think of a plan of how, like the presentation kind of noted on, just having the maintenance behind it and then already like taking in what the existing conditions are and maintaining our existing assets on top of improving and including new ones. So I think the approach of having the tree designation by communities could be great, and I'll bring that back to Sarah.
Okay, so I have a resolution here that says the information be received. Bob Friesen's information be received. To me, that doesn't do anything. I want to do something. I think someone like Bob needs to spearhead something more specific, starting with Grimsby Beach, flesh it out, come up with an action plan, and then adopt that program for the rest of the municipality. Am I out to lunch? Comments? Henry.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think that's a great way that you just put that. I have a question though. Does the town have a tree inventory? And the reason I ask is because when I worked at the city of St. Catharines, I know they had an inventory of every tree on town property, because when the emerald ash borer went through, they had to document how many trees had to come down. So does the town have that? Because if they don't, maybe that's a recommendation. Great presentation, Bob. And you've shown that a couple private citizens could kickstart a program like that. So maybe that's the recommendation if the town doesn't already have that.
Any reaction, Olivia?
From my understanding, the roads department is currently doing a tree inventory, and our park staff have been working on doing the inventory throughout the parks, but they've been doing it through an app. So they're just kind of slowly working on that one.
When I met up with the girl from First Tree, she said that they had been contracted every 3 years to do an inventory in the Grimsby Beach area. I don't know about the other parts of Grimsby. And they had been doing it for the last, they had done it 3 times. So they've been doing it for the last decade. So they obviously have some record. Again, I don't know how it was used, and I didn't get to really see what their inventory looked like, but there is one.
I guess the thing that I'm forgetting is that Olivia is with the Parks Department, and most of the trees we're talking about, I think, are on the road allowances, are they not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carl, it's Bruce. If I may suggest that Haley's got her hand up, and I'd like to speak, but Haley's hand was up first.
Okay, Haley, I'm sorry I didn't see you.
That's okay. Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, I was going to ask a similar question to Henry, but also I was just wondering, Bob, through the inventory that you did you already identify areas where new trees can be planted, like all the gaps, or is that going to be part of like the next steps?
No, we did not, and we did not because there's a lot of decisions about where a tree grows, not just what where is it going to grow best, but also is it going to be in the way of town staff who have to do maintenance. I mean, there's lots of things. I look and think that that'd be a great place for a tree, but it could be in the way of somebody else who has work to do there. So it is going to require several people looking at maps to decide what the best plan for where you would put trees goes.
Thanks.
Bruce?
Thanks, Chair Carl. And to me, there's several elements with trees for the town of Grimsby to look at. One, the biggest landholder in Grimsby are the homeowners. And Sarah has stressed it in pre-meetings, promotion of a good idea to me is incredibly important. She mentioned the start of the Grimsby Garden Club and the town working together and providing trees to people. And I think a couple of hundred trees were distributed that way. But there are several thousand homes in Grimsby. So whatever program we have, the best bang for the buck in some ways is promoting tree planting to homeowners in Grimsby. The kind of information that Bob made available to us tonight, to the value of trees, is the kind of information that the town could distribute to homeowners. We see full page ads for PIC announcements and things like that. It would be great to see communications and promotion by the town of trees. Another element with trees in the town is that the Parks and Rec Department, they have multiple responsibilities, and they have some trees on park lands. The Public Works Department looks after trees on their lands. I don't know if Parks and Public Works are working together in terms of promoting and protecting trees in the town of Grimsby. So if you're looking as a committee for something to do, I'm prepared to make a general resolution so that the town staff could be asked to come up with a tree strategy. I think some staff, as Olivia's reference, is working on that. But we as the Green Committee, we don't know what Public Works is working on. We don't know what Parks is working on. And it would be very helpful if what they're working on, the two of them, was brought forward to this committee. In the long run, I would like to see trees to be the responsibility of one entity in the park, in the town of Grimsby, so that the direction for tree planting, and as Bob has referred to, where the types and where maintenance program development, I think that there should be one program for that. And so in summary, I would like to see the town of Grimsby strike an objective where a management plan or a plan for the protection and promotion of trees and increase of the urban canopy is adopted by town council. And then if that type of direction was adopted by town council, then staff could be hopefully directed to come up with a management for the protection and promotion of trees in Grimsby. A consultant may need to be hired. Public open houses may be needed. But obviously, as you've been asking, I think that the town of Grimsby, that this committee needs to set a goal for the town. And that goal should include, I think, budgets. And by that, I mean, it should set a percentage of the town's budget towards the protection and promotion of trees in Grimsby. Because right now, I think any money that goes into trees is piecemeal. The town doesn't know. There isn't a schedule so that in 3 years' time, we don't know how much of the town spend on trees. Right now, I think it's more, well, we can fit some money here, we can fit some money there. Because of the natural asset, that potential of the urban canopy, as Bob has shown, whether it's shade, air conditioning, flood protection, erosion, wildlife, human enjoyment. I think the town could set a fine example of saying, okay, every year, this is the percentage of the budget that's going to be set out for trees. Thank you for the time, Chair Carl.
Bruce, would you care to turn that into a resolution?
Yes, I wouldn't mind a minute to write it down and give you something that's concise. If others could
or Maria
contribute to the conversation.
Maria, did you hear what Bruce said? Can you turn that into a resolution?
I have, if you give me a moment, I have some thoughts, Chair.
That would be David, Councillor Sharp. Okay.
That is.
Okay.
So, I mean, I thought if we could use the word recommend, since we're an advisory committee,
yes,
we could recommend that Parks and Recs and Public Works forms a joint tree management team, or I don't know what you want to call it, but the point is that we're recommending that Parks and Recs and Public Works forms a joint tree management team or committee, or I
think Bruce categorized it as formulate a strategy, a joint strategy for dealing with trees, tree protection, and tree planting.
So if we recommend that Parks and Recs and Public Works form a joint tree management strategy
for the planting and protection of trees.
Yeah, and those words and then council can adopt it, and they can take that recommendation and push it onto staff, and that would effectively compel staff to get together and form a joint team, or whatever you want to call it, that would form this strategy.
Right.
And I think that kind of conveys the point of it. So I'm open to changes. I mean, it's Bruce's resolution, so go ahead, Bruce.
Bruce?
Thank you, Chair Carl, and I think our words of Councillor Sharp and mine are parallel. I've written this down, and possibly Maria record it so that it can be discussed. The resolution would be, I should say, the Green Committee recommends to the Town Council of Grimsby that a management strategy be adopted or be developed, a management strategy be developed for the protection and promotion of trees in the town of Grimsby. That sets out I think our priority and leaves how it's to be done open so that there can be a healthy discussion by council and staff.
Right. Is there any discussion on that?
Chair, I just wanted, if I could add to that.
Go ahead, Councillor Bothwell.
So I think it's a great motion. I just wanted to bring forward that the Grimsby Beach study, there's the documents that everyone has had an opportunity or not yet to read the tree protection report for the Grimsby Beach. And it does talk about the development of a tree management plan or an urban forest management plan. It talks about tools to help with preserving the canopy. It talks about implementation policies for that any development application will require the preservation of landscaped open space areas and the protection of existing trees as well as tree protection. We know that as part of the development process might be a little flawed in the sense that the pre-consultation agreement might require an arborist report and a tree preservation plan, but it's not followed through. So that's one of the tools they talk about. Potential designation, and they talk about actually in this report about creation of a tree bylaw, which for private and public property tree protection bylaws, and they list a number of examples. So there's a number of tools in this report and study that are recommended to be brought forward back to council as well. And I'm just thinking that we might be able to piggyback on that with future thoughts maybe at our next meeting on how we can maybe mobilize a little further on these recommendations within the Grimsby Beach report, because they have more teeth, and finding one of these where we can recommend a strategy that has a little more teeth. One of the ones that I'd like to bring back to this committee, and I've been doing a little bit of research on, is that pre-consultation step with respect to private properties, and a number of municipalities have stronger wording in their pre-consultation agreements that's actually signed off, and there's penalties for any removal of trees prior to works being done, etc. There's some much stronger pre-consultation agreements that can be put in place for the protection of trees prior to development. So those types of things. I'm just wondering if this motion that we're presenting, which is great, Bruce, it's universal, it covers all of the town. I'm just wondering though, if this Grimsby Beach one, which is basically giving recommendations very similar to what we want to do, can be somehow, we can take what's in there and move it forward maybe a little bit through our committee as well. That's just my thought. Thank you.
Councillor Bothwell, I think, is that on page 14 and 15? The objectives of the plan, there are 5 points there. Is that what you were talking about?
I'm actually looking at the tree preservation plan within the Grimsby Beach study, the document that is on the Grimsby Beach Let's Talk Grimsby website. So there's actually a whole report that's 21 pages there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It outlines, and it's going on. It has Bob's inventory in there as well, and some work on the inventory that they did in this report. And then it talks about next steps for tree protection, not in Grimsby Beach, but we can also expand those same tree protection strategies to all of Grimsby, is what I'm just thinking. And I'm thinking that none of these, like they're talking about a tree strategy and urban forest management plan, but again, the Grimsby Beach study is a land use planning study, and it's not to advance the rest of these tree strategies. So our role may be to take those and go with them. So I'm just thinking if we have an opportunity to read those a little further, we might come back to the next meeting with maybe some further strategies on how to help move those along and implement them a little bit better. That's all for all of Grimsby.
So I think what Councillor Bothwell is saying, we want to take Bruce or Councillor Sharp's motion or recommendation as crafted presently, and modify it to include those 5 objectives somehow. And I think Councillor Bothwell is saying maybe you want to do that at the next meeting after we've had a chance to wordsmith it, I guess.
I'm just thinking, yeah, I'm just thinking that it's by just leaving it with staff to develop a policy or whatever, they're going to say, well, we're already working on it because we're doing it for Grimsby Beach.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. I've heard that a lot.
You know, so I think taking the actual tools that they're saying in this study, like I said, looking at the development application, how we do the pre-consultation and making a recommendation how to strengthen that, you know, to protect trees on private property. There's a way to do that through that language. And then there's a way to take the tree bylaw recommendation in here as a tool and look at whether we want to actually take it and say, hey, let's craft a, and it gives examples from other municipalities and put forward a recommendation that aligns with that strategy. I know it's a lot to take in tonight because tonight we're just hearing the delegation and you know, we want to make things happen. And I'm just thinking we can take that report and maybe actually take a recommendation out of it and say Grimsby Green supports this recommendation and also ask that council consider.
Okay, Bruce, on the next agenda, we have an item, it's called the NPCA presentation on tree planting programs for November meeting. Are we still on schedule for that? I think Steve, I forget his last name, was going to make a presentation. Are we still?
Yes, we're still on for that presentation, and I'm going to, through you, Chair, ask Olivia if that schedule still sounds all right to you, working with Steve Gillis from the NPCA for his presentation.
Olivia?
Yes, it does. I have a meeting set up with him next week to kind of start the conversation with that.
Right. Okay.
Thank you. And Chair Carl, I think the presentation that Olivia will be assisting Steve in coordinating this for a presentation to the committee. That information that's brought to us is, as Councillor Bothwell said, that'll be another tool that the town can use. I don't see that presentation as coming to set a policy that the town.
But it may help with the tree. It may help with the tree planting program.
Oh, definitely. I have good faith in that. And in regards to the Grimsy Beach study that Bob and others have worked so hard to put that tree element into it, I certainly respect Councillor Bothwell's suggestion. I'm afraid that this committee could get tied up for a long time in details. And I'm wondering, Councillor Bothwell, through you, Chair Carl, is those kind of details. I was hoping that those would come out through a coordinated strategy that could be developed by the town. I see some momentum here. We have the Grimsby Beach study, and trees are a part of that. We've talked about trees from day one in this committee, but we've yet to take anything to town council. And the only way we're going to be able to inform town council that we think trees are important is either take this individual motion to the town council and or take a complete report from the Green Committee listing our priorities. I don't think there's enough time in our term left to do that. I think we have to start, as you mentioned earlier in the meeting, our priorities, and trees are certainly one of them. And I think this motion that I've moved is enough to get the idea that this committee sees this as a priority. Now, one piece of the puzzle that is missing, but it, for me, is that the director of planning wasn't able to be with us tonight. I would be prepared if the committee wished to defer this motion until after we hear from the director of planning, because I think she was going to bring some information to this committee, especially in reference to what Councillor Bothwell was talking about in terms of how new developments are going to be dealt with and possible bylaw. Because Antonita, who looks after the planning, working with the developers and the bylaw section of the town. So she may have a valuable input to this, but I see her department, her work closely with Parks and Rec and Culture and Public Works. Planning has to be, I think, the coordinating body behind, and I could be wrong, a management strategy for the protection and promotion of trees in Grimsby. So I hope I could find a seconder for this motion.
Okay, I agree with Bruce that we do have some momentum, and I'm loath to defer the matter to the next meeting because it seems to me sometimes we move along at a snail's pace. And I wish that we could somehow mold your present recommendation together with the 5 detailed objectives or recommendations that I have before me. I think they're the same as what Councillor Bothwell is referring to. And since I'm not allowed to apparently make recommendations, can I specifically ask Bruce whether you would be amenable to amending your recommendation to incorporate something to the effect, and that the management strategy include, I'm not going to read all 5 objectives, but first one says, recognize and designate heritage trees and plaque them. Number 2 is regular maintenance for established mature trees. Number 3 is replenishing our urban forests with a diverse population of indigenous trees and use the inventory data to make decisions for future plantings. 4, work together to encourage, educate, and engage residents and town staff. And 5, encourage tree protection guidelines. It says in Grimsby Beach, but I'd like to change that to in the town of Grimsby. Would you be amenable?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, that would allow, I think, both initiatives to be on the table and get them to council for their next cycle instead of waiting a month. I agree with you, Bob. Bob Friesen has created certain momentum here. He's done a lot of good work, and I think we should piggyback on that. So Bruce has amended his motion, as I have suggested. Councillor Sharp.
I would second it. I will second the motion.
Seconder. Okay, I got to read it apparently.
Here, if you'd like, I had some suggested wording. Would you like me to bring that up on the screen?
Yes.
I'm happy to make any edits if I didn't fully capture the resolution.
The second paragraph needs to be amended to incorporate the recognize and designate heritage trees and plaque them. Regular maintenance for established mature trees.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. Are those the recommendations included in the presentation?
I think on my version of the presentation, it's page 14 of 15.
Because just after that paragraph, I included here that the presentation and its recommendations be referred to staff for review and consideration in developing such a plan.
Well, so you think that paragraph captures those 5 elements on page 14?
I think so, but I'm happy to
it's
write them out
general.
specifically as well.
It's general instead of specific. I would have liked specific, but at this point, I guess I'll take anything.
I'm going to support the chair, and that I think we need to be specific and outline it in detail, because people aren't going to necessarily refer to the presentation, Peter, and the motion should be clear.
Yeah, and I think council needs to know that what they're approving.
Yeah, I don't think the motion needs to refer to the presentation. We're taking our direction from the presentation.
But the town has a policy that you have to dispose of things. And so we have to dispose of Bob's presentation. So
the first part I agree with. And that could be a separate motion that we receive.
Right. You're right.
We received. That's one motion. My motion, I think, should be separate.
Okay.
I thought we had already passed the motion to receive Bob's report.
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, I think that should be done.
I think first. Peter's got it now. I think Peter's getting there.
Just the third line, Peter, replenishing our urban forest with a diverse population of indigenous trees should run together.
And the last bullet, Peter, encourage tree protection guidelines in the town of Grimsby.
And through you, Chair, I don't believe we voted on this first motion here, so it's easiest, in my opinion, just to include it all in one motion, and we can separate it, though, if you prefer.
I agree. Bruce, I don't think we need to separate it. Do you, Bruce?
That's your call. That's your call, Chair. I won't argue with your decision.
Yeah, let's keep the paperwork to a minimum. Okay, we now have the recommendation before us. Is there any discussion on it, Bruce?
Bullet number 1, I would suggest recognize and designate heritage trees and take off the phrase and plaque them. That's too much detail for this motion, I think. And second point, regular maintenance of existing trees. And to committee members, I say that because I don't want to see arguments, well, what's a mature tree and what's it not? And because regular maintenance is required from the day you plant it till the day it dies. Indigenous tree should be indigenous species, or that's maybe semantics, and use inventory data. you can take out the word "the" because I don't know if there is inventory data of the type we need. And encourage tree protection guidelines. I'm going to refer to Councillor Bothwell and Councillor Sharp. Encourage tree protection guidelines. Should that be develop tree protection something else? Because this question in my mind, I would like to see this strategy or the discussion how the strategy is developed include a tree protection bylaw. So are we, because tree protection guidelines to me is weak, the word guidelines. And maybe that's something that, so I think it needs to be stronger. Okay, enforcement of, no.
I think it should say tree protection measures.
I'm happy with that.
I think if you put the word bylaw in there, it's going to be a lightning rod.
Yeah, well, then the word encourage should be replaced with develop. I'm happy with that last bullet now. I think it leaves room for whatever direction staff might recommend.
Maybe just the last word was plan, so I guess it's plans plural. Maybe I don't know if it's singular or plural, but some plans already exist, like the designating heritage trees. So I don't know, Bruce, whether that last sentence that staff be requested to report on the feasibility of developing such plan or plans is in reference to the all bullets or what? How did you want that to read?
I think there needs to be overarching plan or policy that the town adopts, and from that there's going to be plans for specific areas. The parks are going to come up with their own plan, as public works will come up and develop their own plan, because they will have different pressures on how they deal with trees. But I would like to see myself one overriding plan.
Thank you. That makes sense. Yeah.
And Chair Carl, one other thing here, and would have asked for advice from others. Could there be in here, I don't know, where a statement to the effect that be it resolved, the Green Committee places high importance on natural asset management in the town of Grimsby. Be it resolved that a urban forest management plan would be beneficial to the protection of natural asset management. And that might be too much, but we need to recognize that trees are a big asset for the town. And that Dorothy and Dave, is this where you put in statements, general statements like a goal or a mission to this?
I like Bruce's introduction about what the Grimsby Green, like why we're bringing this motion forward. So the be it resolved that the importance of the natural. Bruce, you're gonna have to repeat it real slow, and Peter's gonna have to type it.
Okay.
Because I think that's an important introduction into why this motion is coming forward.
Yes. Okay. that the committee supports. Peter, I'm going to suggest, can we start that differently? Just leave that up and just go to the next line if you want. You can debate it. Be it resolved that the Green Committee stresses the importance of natural asset management in the town of Grimsby, and or the development of a urban forest management plan will play an important part in natural asset management. And then, yeah. Okay, well, that says what I wanted it to say.
Could we change the next line to say, therefore the committee supports?
I'm okay with that. If that's
therefore the committee supports the development of an urban forest management.
My screen froze, so I don't know whether you can hear me.
We can hear you.
I think this captures it well. Chair Carl.
I do. Is there further discussion? Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder? Bruce, I think you are the mover.
Thank you.
I forget who was the seconder.
Councillor
Sharp. Yeah.
Councillor Sharp. Okay, I'm not going to read the whole thing. So can you indicate if you're in favor by raising your hand? That carries. And Bob, there you are. I want to thank you for stimulating that discussion. I think it's important. I'm glad that we got out something a little bit more specific, and I'm hoping that it will result in something concrete next year. So with that, we've got to get back to our agenda. I think the next item on the agenda was areas of naturalization and reduced grass mowing. And I believe this was a request that we made to Sarah Sweeney. And I believe Sarah's not here, so probably Olivia is going to address this. So I'll turn it over to Olivia.
Okay, so the conversations with the grass mowing are still ongoing. I do have a few images to show here of areas of naturalization that we've been working on. So I'm just going to share my screen. Yeah. So there's two areas that we're focusing on. So the first is the Grimsby Mountain Cemetery, and the second is along 40 Mile Creek. So I'm just going to quickly go through these. These are just some ideas that we thought might be of interest to the committee, and we'd love any feedback or ideas that you may have surrounding them. So this is kind of still a high level plan. We're still kind of in the planning process, but this is the Grimsby Mountain Cemetery. So this is the area with the pond. Right now, this is kind of just an open area, and same for along here. So we're kind of proposing to do 3 tree plantings here of larger species, just to kind of provide a bit of more canopy cover in this area. We're also proposing to kind of do a barrier and naturalizing the area surrounding the pond. So kind of creating an ecotone. And then the third item is that we're going to be creating a pathway around this area here, just to kind of give a bit more point of interest and allow people visiting to walk along the cemetery. And then the fourth idea is some locations for memorial benches. So going more into that, I thought it would be interesting to talk about the ecotone. So an ecotone is a zone of transition between distinct ecological communities or habitats. So this could be a narrow or wide, and it may be local. So the zone between a field and forest, or regional, the transition between forest and grassland ecosystems. So this example down here, you can kind of see that this shows the transition between 2 biological communities. So also our thought process around this is that this kind of reduces the amount of maintenance that we have to do around this area, and it allows kind of more of the naturalization to take place. So the existing conditions, I have some images here of what the area currently looks like. So you can see the grass is cut quite close to the pond, and there's not much room for the existing vegetation to grow. So we've kind of come up with some objectives for this. So the first is to naturalize to improve the ecological communities. The second is to create a natural barrier to obstruct human interaction. And then the third, this keeps skipping, sorry. The third is to increase the number of mutually beneficial relationships. So the next steps for this would be to determine the existing conditions of the pond. So taking a look at the edge pattern, what species are currently there, and then also the patterns of movement. So how the pond kind of naturally shifts with the water levels. So if you look at this example here, this is kind of a diagram of how it works. So one ecotone has 3 species. The one on the other side would have another 3, and then you kind of integrate them so that it's kind of more of an equal transition. And then the other item that we're looking to naturalize is 40 Mile Creek. So we are applying for the MPCA restoration program. So our goal with this location is to restore the native community of plants and wildlife. So we would do this by putting native plantings along the creek and this open field space, and really trying to naturalize this area. And then we also have a note here that plants adapted to similar environmental conditions are more likely to succeed at the planting site. So we're going to take a look at our current inventory. Another objective is to reestablish the trail connection. So improving the natural pathway and then the bridge as well. With design, we are going to try to minimize the frequency of disturbances. And then another item is that we're just kind of looking to do an active reintroduction of native plants. So we're still determining if the best approach is to do this by seeds or plants from a nursery. So that was just kind of a quick update on those naturalized areas. Are there any questions or comments? I'll stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, I just have a few questions, if I could, through the chair.
Go ahead, Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair Johnson. So I like the ideas, and I like the 40 Mile Creek. So I'm a part of a group called the Friends of the 40, and we're actually, I guess, the Friends of the 40 2.0, because there was a Friends of the 40 before us. And one of those original members, John Holborn, has been talking to me about that area of the creek, I guess on the east side of 40 Mile Creek near Ontario Street. There's a kind of ivy vine. I don't know the name of it. It's like a vine that it grows, and it kind of drowns out any seedlings that are growing there. And so he's been talking about that we need to get down there and remove it, and then plant some trees there. And so if we have this program or this concept that you've presented today, would that be tree planting? And could we incorporate removal of some of that invasive ivy or whatever? I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, that would definitely be part of it. We're still kind of finalizing the plan of it, but I think our first step is to do that inventory and seeing if it is a native species to the area, how we can keep it and also incorporate new plantings.
Yeah, and so that sounds good. And I'd be happy to involve this committee and other volunteers to do that work. Like, the spring is coming sooner than you think, and by the time we make some plans, maybe outside of this actual formal committee discussion, if we could form like a volunteer committee and get some people to make plans to do the work. It's many hands makes easy work of a task like that, and it's something that we should start thinking about now or through the winter to be prepared. So that's all. If you just could comment on the feasibility of striking that kind of ad hoc committee or getting some information together so that we can be prepared whenever we do decide to do this. Thanks.
I would suggest, Dave, that, or Councillor Sharp, sorry, perhaps if you want to be the chairman of that group, and if anybody wants to volunteer, maybe they could get in touch with Councillor Sharp. I agree with him that spring is much closer than we think it is. And I would urge anybody that wants to do it, let them know now.
So to committee members, if they're interested, they can contact me. And to anybody who's watching online, my information is posted on the town website. You can find my cell phone number and my email address. And you can look me up on Facebook, or I have a page there. You can reach out to me and I'll answer you, and we can get you connected to this if you're interested. It's something that we're already doing with the Friends of the 40, and I'm happy to kind of put the two together. So anyone who's interested, please feel free to contact me. I'm always available.
I have a question for Olivia. Are both of these projects subject to funding by the NPCA, or how are they being funded?
Just the 40 Mile Creek. So this is dependent on the restoration program. So we have been in discussion with the NPCA, but we haven't submitted the application yet. I think it's due mid-November. And the cemetery naturalization, it will be coming from parks funding.
Okay. And the other question I have was, can I assume that there's another report coming that addresses reduced grass mowing, which was the real resolution that this committee passed, I guess it would be 2 meetings ago. Is there a staff report coming that addresses the initiatives that we identified?
Yes, there is. So currently we are kind of doing a comparison of between Public Works and Parks, where we are cutting and the frequency of it. So we're just kind of getting that into GIS right now. So there will be a report coming.
Any idea when that might be?
I'm not entirely sure, but I think next meeting should be a safe bet.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Carl, I just wanted to add on a question to your question, if I may, through you to Olivia.
Go ahead.
Olivia, in terms of grass mowing, I believe part of the resolution or the direction was to do with slopes and riparian areas. Are those 2 items being reviewed by staff now as part of your grass mowing reduction strategy?
Yes, they are.
Well, thank you very much. And my compliments to you for the initiative on the ecotones that you're proposing for the cemetery up on the mountain. I look forward to how you carry on with that. Thank you. Thanks, Chair Carl.
Any further discussion? Okay, so I have a resolution here. I'll read it. Resolved that the information with respect to the 40 Mile Creek tree planting and restoration project be received by the advisory committee. Could I have a mover? Councillor Bothwell, a seconder. Haley? All in favor, raise your hand, please. That carries. Okay. So the next item is committee action items and just an update on various matters. I mentioned before that at the next meeting, we'll have the NPCA presentation on the tree planting program that Olivia, I believe, is it Steve Gillis, will be working on. So we'll have that at the November meeting. Sarah sent you an update on the recruitment of our 2 vacancies. I believe there may be some potential for those 2 members to join us for the November meeting, but I'm not sure. I think I think the deadline was early November, so it has to go to council, I guess, and then it would go to our committee, and it's possible that we might have 2 members by the end of November. The final item is the terms of reference, and you all would have received, I think, from Maria, the final version of the terms of reference. And my question was, are they the same as the ones that the committee approved at our October meeting, or sorry, our September meeting? Do you know, Peter?
Yes, thank you, through you, Chair. There were no changes from council, so this is the same version.
Okay. So that brings us to the other matter regarding tree planting on the agenda, and the presenters.
Sorry, point of clarification, if I could please, Chair, on the terms of reference.
Yes.
Just, Peter, I just wondered if, you know how we added the vice chair under the roles and responsibilities, it talks about election of the chair. Should that paragraph not state also that the committee shall appoint a chair and vice chair from among its voting members, and the chair and vice chair position will be opened annually? Like, there's no reference at all to how the vice chair is appointed or elected in that first paragraph. And I think it should capture both positions, should it not?
Sorry, I don't have them in front of me, Chair. Is there procedures for electing the chair?
Well, it says election of the chair, yes. The committee shall appoint a chair from among its voting members. The chair position will be opened annually. The chair position cannot be held by the same person more than 2 years. A chair will be selected for the committee from the volunteer membership, and the appointment of the chair is not final or binding until approved by council. And then it goes into the role of the chair, but then underneath, the only thing that was added was the vice chair will assume the responsibilities of the chair in their absence, but it doesn't indicate that that vice chair is also elected and appointed by the committee. So I'm just saying that first paragraph under number 7, roles and responsibilities, election of the chair, should probably election of the chair and vice chair.
Yes, through you, Chair. I think the committee can appoint the vice chair however they see fit. We haven't been too prescriptive in the terms of reference by
so it needs
that level of detail in there.
So it does, it does say the committee shall appoint a chair, but it doesn't say and vice chair. So it should, I think it just needs to clarify that both positions are appointed.
My preference would be to leave it just so we don't have to bring it back to council for approval, but I'm happy to make that update if we feel necessary, and I can bring that back to council.
It would align with other committees. Like, I know for Heritage, we do specifically refer to the appointment of the vice chair as well in the opening statement about appointments and elections of chair and vice chair. I just think it was just an oversight, administrative oversight, that it wasn't included in that paragraph.
I agree.
So I think if you're just going to bring it back, it's just an administrative correction. It's not, I don't know if it requires council approval again. It's just to clarify that both positions are, the committee appoints both a chair and a vice chair.
And through you, Chair, I'm happy to make that that amendment.
Okay. So I have a resolution on that as well. And it reads, resolved that the update provided with respect to the current initiatives NPCA presentation on tree planting programs for the November meeting by Bruce McKenzie, recruitment of committee members, and the terms of reference be received by the advisory committee. And I have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Ryan Day, seconded by nobody. Henry. All in favor? It carries. Next item is the tree planting program that I think Olivia made a presentation on this. Was it at the last meeting or the meeting before?
Last meeting.
Last meeting. And Councillor Sharp also was involved. So is there an update on that?
Yeah, I actually have a quick update. Just share my screen again. All right, so we have investigated some possible options on the approaches that we can take for the tree planting program. And I just wanted to give a kind of a quick overview of the three. But it is important to note that due to the current timeline, these are dependent on the 2022 budget suggestions. For the three proposed programs, there are precedents from other groups and municipalities that I thought would be helpful in order to help decide the direction the committee would like to take. And I've also I've created a view of next steps with a high level plan. So feel free to ask questions at any point. So just as kind of a recap or a reminder, the program's vision aims to invest in tree planting and stewardship on private land to help enhance and expand Grimsby's urban forests and to improve the health of the local environment. 95% of the Carolinian forest is located on private property, which really limits the tree planting opportunities because 2% of the forest is only 2% of the forest is publicly owned. This program allows the committee to create a stewardship opportunity to assist with the protection and preservation of Grimsby's ecosystem. I'm going to go full screen. So the three proposed options are, the first is the community tree planting program. The second is a Grimsby green tree sale. And then the third is the Carolinian seedling program. So I'll just quickly go through them. So option one, community tree planting program. So this would be run by the Grimsby Green Committee targeting private property owners. It would be funding up to $300 for trees. There would be a variety of support program recipients. So that could be groups, clubs, or businesses. It could be on private property within Grimsby boundaries. So this would take place spring 2022. Applications would open up in early February and planting targeted for the end of April. This would be dependent on the success. You could also maybe roll it out into a fall planting as well. So option two, the Grimsby Green Tree Sale. So it would be the Grimsby Green Committee with the Grimsby Garden Club and a local nursery. So it'd be kind of a Carolinian tree sale with the funds potentially going to the Grimsby Garden Club. With this, we could track where the trees are planted and then kind of show the growth with those trees and a GIS layer. So this would be similar to private property within Grimsby, and I was thinking 2 options could be for spring 2022, have the sale on Earth Day, or if you wanted to do it in fall, on National Tree Day. And then the third option is the Carolinian Seedling program. So similar, this would be the Grimsby Green Committee. And then there's a nursery that called Pine Needle Farms who works, and they have a seedling kind of a group established already. So it would be free Carolinian seedlings. And the thought would be to attend the 2022 events and hand them out to citizens. Similar, we could create a GIS tracking layer with that. And we would hope that residents would take pictures of them planting the seedlings and share it with the committee. Same, it would be on the private property and then within Grimsby. And similar, it would be early spring or late fall. So there are some precedents. So with option 1, the City of Toronto has kind of, it's called the Community Tree Giveaway Program. So it's targeted at grassroots community-based not-for-profit groups or organizations. And the groups apply for funding and plan an event with native tree plantings on private property. Option 2, which was the tree sale. There's 2 examples. So I have the Grimsby Garden Club. They've previously done it with the town of Grimsby, and they've had a lot of success with it. Last year, they did it focusing on Carolinian species. And similar, the St. Catharines has done a tree giveaway program. So it's kind of mass pickup of trees and a giveaway event. And then there would be the option to make the trees free or at a reduced cost. And then option 3, the seedling program. I found that the Wellington County has something similar. So the seedlings are distributed for free on a first come, first served basis. Because of COVID, they did online orders this year, but previously they have done pickups. And then this kind of gives the ability to pick native or Carolinian trees. So how we kind of see this program going, I built out some next steps. So depending on the outcome of this meeting, staff will be able to develop guiding principles, objectives, and criteria for the committee's approval surrounding the program. And then at the next meeting or the following, depending on the decision, staff will provide an update. From there, I think it would be appropriate to kind of finalize the details. So that would be the timeline and objectives, as well as the roles and responsibilities of the committee members and how they kind of want to work with the key stakeholders. Once that's determined, then the committee would present to council. And then focusing on 2022, kind of that communication aspect. So kind of really communicating the importance of the trees and then different outreach opportunities. All right, so that sums up the update. Are there any questions?
Do we have any questions?
Chair, through you, Olivia, can you post, that's an awesome presentation and some great strategies. And I know Councillor Sharp's been working very hard on these with staff as well. The tree giveaway programs and stuff, it's a little initiative of his, which I'm really glad, he's brought forward. And I think it's the plan you have and the timeline are going to be kind of tight with respect to the budget, because I think your idea is to come up with a dollar figure as well that you can put forward through the budget deliberations. But I think it's a great initiative. I want to thank you very much for putting it forward. Can you post your presentation with the agenda online, just so that we have it for future reference as well? That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so apparently we have to make a decision tonight about one of the 3 options. So my question is it's a lot to absorb. Is there any way we can delay making a decision until the next meeting? Or will it just come, Bruce?
Through you, Chair, I'd like to ask you, in consideration of, what's the word? Logistics and her professional advice, and I hope I'm not putting her on the spot, but what option are you in favor of, Olivia? Is that a fair question to you?
Yeah. I personally really like the idea of the Carolinian Seedling program. I think it's a great way to kind of expand the Carolinian forest, and we could kind of reach the most amount of residents in Grimsby with the seeds, and then track them from there. I think it'd be a great initiative for the Grimsby 2022 celebrations as well.
Thank you. And just a follow-up question to that. Is that that's because there was a lot of information to absorb to help me with my memory. Was that option one where private homeowners are going to have the ability to plant trees on their property?
Yes, so it would be free Carolinian seeds basically, and then the private property owners could pick up on a first come first served basis and plant them kind of on their property where they think is best fit.
And would it be seeds or seedlings?
Seedlings, sorry.
Thank you. And with that, would there be a informational piece as to how to care for that with it? Okay, thanks very much for your suggestion there.
Yeah, no problems. And just another item, dependent on the approach, finalizing the details, that would kind of include what seedlings we want to include in the program. So dependent on that, we can create kind of planting manuals and growing conditions and all those details with it.
Great.
Olivia, is that the program that they're implementing in St. Catharines?
The one in St. Catharines is the tree sale. So I believe they did a giveaway of specific trees to private property owners.
Is it possible for you to put the option up that you just favored?
The favored, sure.
To the one that you...
So this is the one that was done in St. Catharines with the tree sale, and then option 3 is the Carolinian Seedling program.
Okay, my question is, Bob Friesen seemed to think that it wasn't a good idea to overemphasize the Carolinian forest aspects, that they had their limitations. They were never going to grow very high. Can you comment?
Was that on all Carolinian trees, or was that specifically to the redbud? I think it was a redbud that he shared.
No, I thought it was all Carolinian. I could be wrong, but that's the impression I got. But this one says pine. Oh, it's Pine Needle Farms. Okay.
Chair Carl.
Yes, sir.
If I may, just to support what Olivia was saying, Bob was referring specifically to redbud. I think the general point that he was making was to be careful, that the town should be careful as to what species they're planted where, because in some situations redbud might work out very well, and in others it wouldn't. And we rely on the experts like Bob and Olivia to provide that guidance, because most Carolinian species, tree species, can develop into very large trees.
Okay.
I think the mayor's got his hand up too, Carl. I don't know if you can see it as well as Councillor Sharp.
No, I can't.
Yeah, the mayor's got his hand up.
Mayor Jordan.
Thank you. Just on Carolinian tree species, like it depends what one you want, but or what you're talking about. But something like black gum can get to 120 feet high. So tulip tree again, that size. If you look at St. John's Conservation Area, you'll see tulip trees that are probably 140 to 150 feet high. Mind you, they're 200 years old, but Carolinian forest species, there are large trees available. And the nice thing, there are overlap species. that we can use that are found in the Carolinian forest, but aren't necessarily exclusive to the Carolinian forest. So it opens up quite a variety of tree seedlings. Thanks.
Okay, any further discussion? Any,
Yeah, I do, Chair Gonson.
Councillor Sharp?
Thank you. So I like two of these things. One, I like the program, I think it was number 1, where we can offer a grant, a small grant to community organizations to plant trees. I mean, it might be enough for them to buy some more established trees. Those trees have a stronger success rate, and that might be something that has more success. We might get some actual substantial trees out of it. But I also really like the tree seedling because it engages more people. It's like you can have an event, and then you can plant. I don't know what the budget is. Maybe you can plant 500 or 1,000 seedlings around the town, or you can give away 500 or 1,000 seedlings, and maybe half of them make it into the ground, and maybe half of them start to establish, and maybe half of them make it through the first year. And so, like, that's 100 trees that'll grow, right? And 125. But what I like about that option number 3, or whichever one it was, the seedling giveaway, is that we can make it into a community engagement. Like, we can get people involved, we can get kids involved, we can ask for some volunteers, we can get some high school kids. I don't know the budget implications for it, but I presume that it would be similar. Neither of them have a huge budget. It's not like a big ticket item that we're going to ask. It's a few $1,000s. And so I think either would be good. I'm leaning towards the seedling option because of the level of involvement with the community. I guess it has to be weighed by how much success we'll have with the actual growth of these trees, because I can picture some people, I mean, they put them in their van and then they leave them in the van and then they die before they even get home. So some of these seedlings won't make it, and I presume the majority of them won't make it. So we kind of have to weigh because there's benefit in just having people out to talk about these species of trees, even if they don't get the tree in the ground and plant it. But say that we do get 100 of them into the ground, that's 100 seedlings, right? But it will take several years before they really establish, and they maybe only a portion of them will make it. So the committee has to really consider what we value more, the public engagement or the specific money directed to organizations or people that can focus more on a healthy tree establishment. And if there's any comments on that, I just will close saying, I guess I'm leaning towards the seedling option. Thanks.
I'll put a motion on the floor to go for option 3. If Councillor Sharp wants to second it, and then we can vote on that. And if it's not successful, we can look at the other options. If that's
Okay.
suitable to the chair.
Okay, I have a motion by Councillor Bothwell, seconded by Councillor Sharp.
I'll let someone else second it. Let them get on the agenda. There's some people who haven't really participated.
Haley, seconded by Haley. Okay. Shall we vote on option 3? I don't have any words. Bruce? Bruce is voting. Okay. All in favor?
Hey.
Carries. I guess you'll have to write it up, Peter. I also have another resolution I might as well deal with, which is resolved that the committee resolved that the information provided regarding the tree planting activity event be received by the advisory committee. Can I have a mover and a seconder?
Sorry, Chair. I think maybe that's the motion that we should just amend to read, and that the committee recommends that the staff proceed with option 3 and as Olivia presented. Like, is that the intention, Peter, of that motion?
Sounds good. I agree. So we have a mover, Councillor Bothwell, of the amended motion. The seconder was Haley. And all in favor? That carries. Which brings us to the Green Acknowledgement Awards. Erin Holko sent her regrets. She had a problem with, I guess, babysitting tonight. So, Haley, you're going to make a presentation. The matter was approved by council and in some detail. So, I don't know if you got the minutes. If you want to go through the items in the minutes or do whatever you want, I'm not going to make your presentation for you. So, floor is yours.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, so I've only got one thing to present really, which is the logos for Grimsby Green Advisory Committee. So the next step on our timeline for the Acknowledgement Awards was to prepare the social media plan. And we need to get the guidelines still from Sarah, so we'll request that this evening. But first we needed some kind of logo, because the idea was to send out some teasers on social media to tell everyone who Grimsby Green is first, and then to go through the awards procedure asking for nominations. So I'll share we've got 4 logos that Sharon Porter has put together for us. So I'll just go through them here. So she's put them on t-shirts, so you get a good visual of what they could look like and how they could be used. This is the second. The third. And the fourth. And then I just combine them together just so that you can see them as one option there. So yeah, this would be used on the teasers for social media to start with, introducing ourselves, and then also to be used on the award certificates and things like that. So yeah, I'm not sure what the procedure is. If I should share this after the meeting and we can discuss it at the next meeting. Is that best?
The matter that was considered by council says logos and a tagline for the committee to be reviewed and proposed to council. So this has to go to council, and we're scheduled to review the nominations in January. So we don't have much time to really get going. So if it's at all possible to make a selection this evening, we should try to do so.
Okay. Any comments?
I do, if you'll indulge me, Chair Johnson.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank you. I like option 3, and I like all of the options, and I think that the artwork's great. Thank you to Sharon Porter. I like the simplicity of options 3 and 4, and I prefer option 3 because it also has the little home in there, and I don't know if you see the home in between the two trees, but one of our objectives is greening the built form. So it's not just about tree planting. It's also built form. So, and I think that's a talking point that you can kind of explain to someone. Look, these are trees or leaves or whatever they are but they there's also a little house in there, and you can talk about that. So
Yeah.
that's my opinion, and that's all I'll share. See if there's other comments. Thanks.
Anybody else?
Ryan's got his hand up, Carl. Chair.
Oh, okay, Ryan.
Hi, Chair. You know, I really like option one. I can just see that being just like part of a municipality, a good logo that just kind of shows a home and some greenery in it. The other ones are great too. I'm not cutting anything of that apart, but I focused on seeing option one.
I'll jump in, and I'm going to say as well, if you don't mind, Chair, that I like both option 1 and 3, but I am leaning towards option 1 as well.
Anybody else? Well, why don't we do it by which one gets the most number of votes?
Carl, Chair, before you do that, can I make a comment?
Yes, Henry.
I like option one for the reasons that Ryan laid out. What I don't like about it is the acronym at the bottom. We live in a society of lots of acronyms. Is there a way to maybe change that and put just Grimsby Green where it says GGAC? And I think that would really give that one a lot of impact. And then maybe, I like that. I like that one. That's my favorite. I just don't like that acronym at the bottom. Grimsby Green, I think, says a lot more.
It does.
Sorry to kind of throw a monkey wrench into it.
Ryan?
Actually, I do agree with that as well. If we remove that and just have it's a great logo.
I agree also. I think that I'd like people to refer to us as just the Grimsby Green.
Yeah.
Or the Grimsby Green Committee. I mean, this is our official title, but people can just call us even the Green Committee, right?
Yeah.
So to take away the acronym and the wording around the circle there and put Grimsby Green underneath.
Yeah.
I can ask Sharon to make those changes and send those around.
Sorry, I just want to check with Ryan and Henry, I guess, whatever, Henry, with taking away the GGAC, are you actually suggesting then taking the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee, the circle of text out of the image and just putting Grimsby Green underneath? Or should it be Grimsby Green around where the text is and take the acronym right out? Like, so just replace Grimsby Green Advisory Committee with Grimsby Green around it? Or, because I just think if we take that element out that's surrounding the image, it's and just put Grimsby Green below. I don't know if we're leaving something out.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Bothwell, I was thinking if we took the Grimsby Green Advisory Committee from option 2, put that in place of that acronym, then it kind of comes redundant to have the circle of words above that image.
Okay, gotcha.
I guess we could leave it in, but I think it kind of comes redundant. And then Grimsby Green gets the focus, like Councillor Sharp said, and below it, Advisory Committee completes the formal name of our committee.
Great. So the full, take that text from option 2 and plug it in underneath the image on 1, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other ideas? So Haley, I guess we're going with option 1.
Okay. I'll see if Sharon can make those changes, and I'll send an email with the revised logo.
And we could do that before the next meeting by email, I guess.
Okay.
Do we want it to come back to the committee in November? Any thoughts?
No, I think we can approve option one, subject to changes discussed.
Okay,
I agree with Councillor Sharp. We're good to go with, I'm sure Sharon will take that away and make it right. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I think we need to have a resolution on that. So that was moved by, I think it was Councillor Sharp, that we approve option number one as amended. I think it's got to go to
That was
council.
Ryan Day.
Okay, Ryan. Seconded by Henry. All in favor? Carried. So I just wanted to quickly go over the schedule here. We're going to review nominations for the Green Awards in January.
Sorry, Carl. We were gonna.
Oh, you weren't done. Okay, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah. I can just run through the timeline again. I think we're just a month ahead of what you may have written down. So before the next meeting, we'll be coming back with the social media plan for the teasers and how to announce the awards and request nominations. And then December, we'll start plugging those out. So January nominations will actually open. And then in February, we'll review the nominations that have come in. And then the awards ceremony will be on April 22nd, which is Earth Day.
Okay. Sounds good. Peter, do I need to have the committee pass this resolution that I have before me?
Sorry, Chair, do you mind just reminding me what that resolution is?
Resolved that the information with respect to the Green Acknowledgement Awards be received by the advisory committee.
Yes, just as a formality, if you don't mind.
Okay, as a formality, can I have a mover? It loses. Haley moves it and it's seconded by Bruce. All in favor? Carried. Okay, so we're on the, is this the last item? Yeah, it's the last item. New business. I sent an email around regarding the Main Street Heritage Conservation District study. And I invited you to review the recording of that PIC or public information meeting. So that's on the agenda tonight. And then in addition, you were sent an email by Sarah Sweeney, I think it was yesterday or the day before, inviting the committee to submit feedback on 4 projects. First one was the Recreation Trails Master Plan. There's a public information meeting, I think tomorrow night. The second one was the Casablanca Waterfront Park project. The third one was the Winston Road Neighborhood Community Benefits Survey. And the final one was the Downtown Reimagined Design, I guess. Can't even, idea read. Anyways, you get the picture. You read the email. So I'm going to combine all of those into new business, and they're all items that we may want to give input on. And I've been thinking about it. We're all citizens of the town of Grimsby, so we could give input as citizens. But I think what they want here is input through the Green Committee lens. So my issue is, do we collectively provide input on these projects, or we do it individually, or does anybody have any thoughts? Maybe one of the counselors can give us some guidance. No? Councillor Bothwell.
There's a whole lot of studies out there right now, like and surveys and stuff. And how do we contribute as a committee? Considering the timelines are very short, I think on some of them closing for comments. I can't remember the end dates, or I think it's first week of November or end of October on some of them. Being that our strategic plan and our role is very focused on a couple of things, some of the studies may not, the Main Street East one for sure, the community benefits, I don't know whether or not input from this committee. Yeah, it might, because part of it is parkland, right? And Councillor Sharp knows this, or what are we going to put in parks, maybe, or add to parks, or although that is also a development requirement. So it's above and beyond that the community benefits are. How do we contribute? I'm at a loss to say, like, do we have time to put something together in such a short period before the consultations close? Councillor, like, what do you think, Carl?
Well, I put the Main Street Heritage Conservation District study on the agenda because at the time when we put the agenda together, it was the only one. And I know we have enough time to comment on that. There's no question there. And I sat through 2.5 hours of one of the most boring, PICs I've ever sat through. And I feel like I deserve the right to provide some input after, you know, it was all building related, and without a single word about the trees, the natural heritage. Anyways,
what you've suggested is that we do have time on that one, and I'm sure
on that one.
So yeah. It's initial. The Trails Master Plan is tomorrow night. I'm going to suggest maybe that members attend that, and then we come back with any comments, or because there will be a commenting period following it. So I think if we just observe, and we can participate in that as well, but then come back with some cohesive recommendations to the next November committee meeting for the Trails Master Plan, because I think that one will be one that we will have more input, more impact on. Olivia's got her hand up.
Yes, I was just going to say something similar. I think for now, it would be great to get individual impact. I mean, comments and feedback on the surveys for all of those. And then maybe at the next meeting for the ones that are still open, you can discuss how you want to approach it as a committee.
And maybe in the interim, if there's one where we don't have an opportunity because it's too late, maybe we'll just send the information around to the committee to say, don't bother looking at the Winston Road neighborhood community benefits survey because we're too late. Or is it possible that we do it sort of virtually together? We send our comments to each other between now and the next meeting, and try to refine that, and ask for, I mean, virtually you can do a lot more than you can in person. So I mean, we have to struggle through this COVID. So why don't we use one of the benefits of the COVID by doing it virtually before the next meeting?
That's a great idea, as long as we're not decision making, right? We can't advance business through email. Right?
We're not. We're just an advisory committee to.
But
we're nothing.
I think that's a great idea. Is any comments on any of the studies, Carl? Like you said, bring them forward after people individually do them and then bring them forward to the next meeting.
Okay. Okay, that was all that I really wanted to talk about in that item. So it's the 4 projects that Sarah sent everybody the email on, together with the Main Street Heritage Conservation District study. I probably have a resolution on that. Do I? No, I don't. Peter, I don't have a resolution on that one.
I don't believe that we need anything for that item, Chair.
Excellent, excellent. So that brings us to the end of our meeting. I think is there
Right, before we end, if I could just contribute a little bit to the new business.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair Gonson. I know we're in new business now, and one of the things I wanted to mention, previously I committed to planting at least 1 tree this year, and we're coming on November. Halloween is coming up, but this is the time of year to plant. You can plant in the fall, and so I committed to planting at least 1 tree, and I know that the committee can take some time to decide and make plans and programs and grants and etc. So I have currently made arrangements to purchase 5 sugar maple trees, and they're 30 millimeters diameter. They're about 6 to 8 feet tall. I don't know. I haven't picked them up yet, but they're bare root trees. So you dig a hole, you put the tree in, you loosen the dirt. I have, I think, 3 that I'm going to plant on private property, and then there's 2 more that I've asked Sarah Sweeney to help me find somewhere on town property or a park or somewhere that I can plant them. I'm excited. I like sugar maple trees, specifically they're native species around here. They're part of the Carolinian forest, but they also grow in other places. And my specific interest in them was because 4 or 5 years ago I started making maple syrup, and I started going out looking for sugar maples, and I found all sorts of maples, and they all give you a little bit of sap, but the sugar maples have the sweetest sap, makes the most syrup, and it was difficult to find which ones were sugar maples. I just tapped any tree that looked like a maple, and if sap came out of it, I made syrup. But it was really fun, and I want to contribute back to the natural environment. And so this has come out that I'm going to plant 5 sugar maple trees in Grimsby, and I can do it all myself. If anyone wants to help, I would greatly appreciate some help. It'll probably be within the next 2 weeks. Again, all my information's available online. Anybody on the committee already has it. And so I just wanted to say that I have followed through on that, and I'm excited to follow through. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Any other new business? Okay, I just want to conclude with our next meeting is Wednesday, November the 24th. And then we have one on December the 22nd, which is like 3 days before Christmas. So we should, if you're not going to make it, which there's some chance that you might not make it because it's a pretty busy time of the year, maybe you could let us know earlier than a day, or let us know a couple of weeks ahead of time, so we don't do a lot of planning, because it is a lot of work to put these agendas together. So can I have a motion to adjourn? I'll make that motion. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. See you next time.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.